The more the government gets away with controlling your life, the more they'll keep doing it. More and more, bolder and bolder. A lot of people in the Western world are realizing that for the first time. Today, I'm going to tell you how CBDCs may be used as one of the final blows against your freedom in the Western world and how you can fight back. One thing we've been hearing from Nomad Capitalist clients is they never thought things would get this bad in their country, both on the personal freedom side and the financial freedom side. Today, I'm going to share with you and react to two different clips, one from Joe Rogan, one from Bankless, talking about impending CBDCs. And I'm going to try and make the distinction between the country that you're living in now, perhaps a Five Eyes, large, hard to change, surveillance state country, versus a lot of the countries that we talk about at Nomad Capitalist, and how that difference can help you with CBDCs so they don't have to be the final blow. Here's Joe Rogan.
I think of Bitcoin the same way I think about the early internet. I think they didn't see it coming, and now it's a viable form of currency. You can actually buy things with it, and I think the government is freaking out. I think what they're going to try to do, there's going to come a time where some government, whether it's the United States or another government might try it first, they're going to try to implement a digital currency, a centralized digital currency that they can control.
Yeah.
What's scary about that is they could say, Khalil, you know, we've looked at, you know, your behavior online, and you have some marks against you.
Yeah.
And so you're not going to be able to buy this.
So you don't even need CBDCs for the last part he's talking about, by the way. If the government pays for your health care, if the government pays for your retirement, even if it's giving you back your own money, they can set whatever conditions they want. Oh, were you drinking too much? Did you have too many Cheetos? You know, we're going to raise the retirement age. We're not going to give you health care. We're going to ration things. I mean, that's what happens. The government's not good at managing money. So that's the first thing. CBDCs are just the latest continuation of that. And so for me, I like to look at the long-term track record of, certainly from my lifetime, the government's done a terrible job. Maybe in my grandmother's lifetime, maybe there's a time when you could really be proud of what they were doing. I don't think really at any time in my life you can be proud of how the government is representing you and how they're serving you, because I don't think in big countries, particularly in the West, the government is focused on serving you anymore. Now, Joe Rogan said they didn't see it coming. So governments are largely in a reactionary mode. I like the countries where they're saying, we're looking for the next big thing because we want to jump on that. We want that to be our ticket to some relevance. We want that to be our ticket to creating jobs. And you see some of the countries we talk about. I mean, Armenia, if you have a tech company, please come right in. We'll roll the red carpet out for you. Malta and Bermuda with crypto. I mean, who's going to be the AI leader? It's not going to be the country that you're in. And so what the book, The Sovereign Individual, talked about is how once politicians do realize what's going on, they're going to become increasingly desperate. So Joe Rogan talks about how they didn't do some of the internet censorship stuff because the politicians thought there'd be too much backlash. Eventually it gets to the point where they don't worry about the backlash anymore. You know, my father said when I was growing up, eventually people will elect some, you know, total outsider, you know, politically incorrect guy because they don't know what else to do. And Trump was perhaps the beginning of that. Whether you like him or not, things will get so bad, people will just do whatever. That applies to both the people. And let's be honest, optimism in the Western world is way down. Optimism in other parts of the world that we talk about, in many cases, is up because people are joining the middle class. They're moving in the right direction. Things have largely plateaued and are even sinking in a country like the United States. Just look at the statistics. And so you will see the government get more and more and more desperate. Why? Because not every country is going to follow along. Not every country has the resources. Not every country has the desire to surveil their own citizens, to track the same way the U.S. does. And I'll come back to that in a moment. The politicians eventually just aren't going to care. They'll just do it because they know a lot of people are on their side. It's for safety. It's for the children. Just look at this century. They used 9/11. They used the war on terror. They used all these different things. And a lot of people just agree with it. In the Western world, increasingly, people agree with it. I believe that certain countries, it's just not in their DNA to do some of this stuff. When I talked to my friend in Norway, he says, I walked down the street the other day and I passed the Minister of Finance. And nobody really is bothered by that. That wouldn't happen in the US. And so it's a bit more in the DNA of a country like Norway. But we've discussed, what if Norway had 400 million people instead of 4 million people? Would they be so accountable? Would there be this sense of like, we have to kind of work for the people? One of the reasons I talk about Caribbean citizenship by investment is these countries have 5- and 6-figure populations. And so there's a certain accountability. They can't just do whatever they want. They don't have the means. Their first priorities, we need low-income housing. We need a road. We need a school. Like literally, that's the topic of conversation. We need a school. A school. Not we're building 1,000 schools. We need one new school. in some of these Caribbean countries. You can make a donation, be a citizen in a matter of months. The U.S. is trying to make it harder. The EU is trying to make it harder. Why? They don't want you to have options. These options didn't exist when I was born or when you were born, but now they do. And so I'm not so worried about the small countries where it's not in their DNA. I'm worried about those Five Eyes Western surveillance states. And those are the ones where they're not going to care as much about the pushback because they feel unaccountable. And as it becomes more desperate, and as you have too many other options, they're just going to be nasty. The sovereign individual talked about, some kind of violence. I don't know if I'll go that far, but they're going to shut down your options. They might stop you from using other kinds of money. Who knows what they do? We can only look to history and see what other countries have done that weren't free. Some of those, formerly communist countries are now actually more free in the rankings than a place like the US or the UK. But what did we see? You can't hold other currencies, some of them said. You think that wouldn't apply to cryptocurrencies? They're going to try and shove some of this stuff down your throat. I'm not as scared of this as some people, so I don't get as animated as some people because I've taken a lot of steps to protect myself, and I do believe there will be somewhere to go. But it's all about the DNA of where you are going. Now, let's hear from Bankless.
There's only two kinds of CBDC. There's the kind with privacy and the kind without. It's not easy to get in a CBDC, but if we do a CBDC like this fully surveillance capable, it doesn't give the actual privacy keys to the users, then we're not going to have the moral high ground over China. I mean, people are trying to precipitate some kind of new Cold War or something. It would seem that the basis of it is that this is not a free society and they're spying on people and, the state has too much power, and that really comes down to, can we chat see who you talk to or not? What kind of CBDC are we going to build and what kind of message are we going to have? The ones that actually let you protect that, or is it going to be like, trust us, the government has the keys because we might need to check on you, and all that. You just can't trust other people with your keys because you don't know if they leak what they leak and what they do.
This is the entire kind of basis of Western civilization. And again, I'm sure there was a time when my grandmother was alive when you're like, hey, you know what? I trust my country. They're doing the right thing. I don't think anyone believes it anymore. We've seen, decades now of evidence. And yet it's almost a situation, they say like politically, oh, he's so far to the right, he's almost left. These, let's call them the Five Eyes countries on these CBDCs, they're almost so far on one side in claiming like, oh, we're so much more free, that they go over to the China side. And everybody, that watches and says, oh, I don't need international diversification, it's going to fail everywhere. They're the ones who are like, if you want to leave the US, your only option is China and Iran. It's like, no. There's a big pool in between because really the countries that are surveilling you in the West that we've seen, it's been documented for a long time now, is that really different than the countries that you say, oh, go there. If you don't like it, go to Russia, go to North Korea, go to China. There's really more in common than you would think. There's a big pool in the middle. Serbia, no CBDC. Yeah, good luck trying that. I would look at getting a residence permit in a country like that. And they're actually looking at making it easier to get citizenship. You're at the doorstep of Europe. But if you think those people are going to tolerate some of the stuff that maybe it's going to be tolerated in the West, it's a different mindset. What is in the DNA? Now, I'm not as concerned about infrastructure. I'm concerned about intentions. I don't know that I'm really that concerned about what Bahamas is doing if they have a CBDC versus what the UK or the US is doing with the CBDC. I don't know that the Bahamas needs to surveil people, wants to surveil people. Now, could the Bahamas be bullied by a larger country to get that data? Sure. By the way, we're already seeing that. If you fly with an airline that flies to the US, my understanding, and maybe someone will tell me in the comments that I'm wrong, is the FAA already gets that data. One of the things that's a condition of being able to fly to the US is you share passenger manifests. So there's all kinds of ways that bigger countries are already doing this. Doesn't mean you shouldn't try and protect yourself. I simply think we have to acknowledge what's the DNA, what are the intentions of some of these countries. Big Western countries that don't change on a dime, where the culture has been supportive, let the politicians do what they want, because you have that trust in institutions that has started to erode, but not everyone has seen. Those countries are going to they're going to try and get away with more. Just as sovereign individuals said, they will go down swinging. I don't think they were ever trying to swing in most of the countries in the world, where they just kind of leave people alone, both because of the DNA. They figure they can't get away with it. They don't have the resources. They don't really care that much. I know it's hard to believe that in certain places, they're just like, let the guy do what he wants. I'm not saying let him do stuff that's wrong, but just let people live their life. That is a mantra, honestly, of much of the world when you get out into it. Now, some of those countries you wouldn't be as comfortable living in, but, a country like a Serbia, parts of Latin, even parts of Mexico, it is more open. You want to have residence permits and citizenships, and I would also say bank accounts in those countries. You want countries in your life that have a different DNA the one that you're living in. And we've got to get over this idea that it looks a little bit different or they speak a different language. And certainly we've got to get past this idea that, there's nowhere to go because it's either the US or Somalia, which is utter rubbish. And so what kind of CBDC are they building? Well, I think we know the intentions of the big Western countries. This to me is a call for diversification. I left many, many years ago, not over this issue, but I just saw things are going in the wrong direction. And I like the lifestyle in other countries better. I like the fact that things, just organic life in most countries in the world. People make fun of me sometimes. Oh, he doesn't live in the fancy countries. Yeah, because I just get left alone. When I fly through Heathrow, I just feel different. It's like, I want to get back to organic life. And this is what you have to understand exists outside of the countries where the DNA is to screw with everybody. It's residence, it's citizenship, it's bank accounts. It's what Nomad Capitalist helps people do. You can go to nomadcapitalist.com. I did this long before I helped other people do it. By the way, you see a bunch of people online now. We had one guy copy our entire website, except for he changed my name to his name and my old tax rate to his old tax rate. The rest of it was literally a carbon copy. The guy, probably not the best expert. He's just kind of, trying to cash in a niche, I would guess. I spent years researching and setting this up for myself before we even started to offer any help to anybody. And it just kind of developed organically, oddly enough. And so we help people create and execute holistic plans that figure out what are your goals, what are you trying to avoid, what would you like to have more of in your life, and how do we use all the different options that the rest of the world has to offer to make sure that you and your family and your wealth are always going to be safe no matter what. And that's why I really don't worry as much as some people, because all my eggs are not in one basket. Obviously, we always want to be vigilant. But if you create the kind of diversification we're talking about, you won't have to worry as much about being vigilant as someone who's just a sitting duck in one country where the DNA is to come after people and their wealth and their privacy. I think there's fundamentally a difference. And when I talk to people who've done what I've done, they say, you know what, now that you say it, I feel it. Go to nomadcapitalist.com. We started offering this service after I learned how to do it the hard way, and we'd be happy to help you avoid doing it the hard way and setting up your own diversification plan so you can also watch this stuff from afar.